Isn't it?
Childish. Yes. Fabulous. Well, Graham, good morning.
Good morning, Marcus. How are you?
I'm marvellous. Thank you for asking indeed.
Perfect.
How are you?
Well, I'm extremely well as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, we're also on a bit of camera today, so I do the thing you never actually do, and that's wave at the camera, because this is all a bit of a test. So, yeah, hello, Mum. So, welcome to the Mindset Revolution podcast. Thank you so much for taking part and helping us help other people talk about mindset, talk about what makes you tick, us tick, and maybe gives other people an idea of how they may adopt the best mindset for themselves. So I know who you are, the Graham Miller, if I may say so. However, for those who are not familiar with your fine work, could you please introduce yourself?
My fine work. Yeah, well, Graham Miller, I have been in the media for over 40 years. Can you believe it? Well, I must say, I started when I was very young. But I'm a journalist by trade. But during the 40 years, I've worked for Fleet Street, local newspapers, BBC Radio, Sky Television, ITV, ITN. And my last sort of on-camera job was at ITN, where I was a newsreader and sports correspondent. So certain people of a certain experience might remember, because we used to do a lot, and in those days there were fewer channels and we used to get huge audiences on a Saturday night. So those people of a certain, as I say, experience might remember. Otherwise, this is who I am, it's what I do, and I run a company called Media View, still working in the media, and we help people with their media problems. And it works very well, and I'm having fun.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to do this because I know
what
people on the news do that. I'm
when
not
you
sure
have an
why,
audition
but
to be a newsreader, that's what you have to do. How do you,
yes,
how do you shuffle,
can I shuffle the questions?
how do you shuffle them?
And I'm probably never going to look at it. So yes, I think you're being very modest. Actually, you know, I meet people quite regularly, and you know, we're networking or doing some work, and I mentioned that we do some work together. They're very kind. They do say the Graham Miller.
Well,
yes,
very nice.
just the Graham Miller.
That's
So
very nice.
thanks for taking time out today. So what we're trying to do with this is share stuff that goes on in here between our ears, if you like, the mindsets that people adopt, which can help us all be more positive, proactive, productive, what helps us get through in business, and even talk about some maybe challenges we faced. It's not therapy though, you know, it's not all that. So first of all, what would you say in terms of your ethos, your mindset towards business and attacking challenges and overcoming stuff? I mean, do you have any processes you follow?
Yes and no, which is a terrible answer, isn't it? I mean, one thing I have learned, when I sort of left the corporate world of media, that is my last job at ITN, I then started to work for myself with this media company, Media View. But I learned by making mistakes. And hopefully I try not to make those same mistakes again, which is not always easy. But I think that's the only way you can learn in this type of business that you're running by yourself. If you're working within a business or within an industry, it's already taken care of for you, isn't it? You have to sort of adopt and adapt the way the other people work. But when you're on your own, you are literally on your own. You have to learn as you go, think on your feet, respond accordingly, and hopefully you don't make too many mistakes. But having said that, I look back down the years, because I've been doing this 15 years or whatever it is. I'm 104.
104. Yeah, you don't look at the day over.
103.
103.
When you sort of look down the years, you think, well, actually, in many ways now, I'm glad I made that mistake, because I don't do it now. And you're continually learning, you're continually, hopefully, getting better. And that's the process. So I don't have a set rule book. I just learn as I go and try and remember what works and what doesn't work as I go through.
Okay, thank you. And I'm guessing when you're kind of on the spot, you're out there covering something, things don't always run smoothly. So can you recall any particular instances where it was
how long have you got?
seat of the pants moment?
Absolutely. Well, there are so many. I mean, a lot of the time I was working live, and when you're working live, things do tend to get really messy. And the challenge then, it's slightly different now, but the challenge then was not to let the audience know. I remember one particular occasion, I was covering the England football team in Italy, who were about to play a big World Cup match, and we were in Rome. And I was about to do a live spot into the early evening news, talking about the England game to come. So we're standing, I'm in Rome, where am I standing?
The Trevi Fountain.
In front of the Colosseum.
The Colosseum, okay.
I've got to have that. So I'm standing in front of the Colosseum. and I can hear London talking to me in my earpiece, because we're all strapped up to earpieces and God knows what. And suddenly, well, about a minute before we went live on air, I lost all contact
Ouch.
with London. I could hear nothing. But apparently they could hear me, I learned later, but I couldn't hear them. So my producer came up with this wizard idea. He said, don't worry, he said, I've got it sorted. I thought, all right. He said, I'll ring the studio on my mobile phone.
Uh-huh.
I will I will be at your feet out of shot. Okay? And when it was John Suchet was the presenter, when John Suchet's finished his first question, he said, I will tap you on the ankle and that will be your cue to give your answer. I thought, brilliant. Man's a genius.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We're okay. So I'm standing there and suddenly there's this whack on my ankle. Of course, I don't know what the question is. Do I? I hadn't thought of that.
No,
I hadn't thought of that. So I thought, okay, so I delivered this eulogy for 30, 40 seconds about how I expected the match to go. And I finished, and suddenly I got another whack on my ankle. I thought, well, he's asked me a supplementary question. What is it? I've no idea. So off I went again and sort of pontificated about the game and what it would mean if England lose, what it would mean if England draw, and so on. And then it said, that's it. Now back to the studio in London. And that was it. Did it work? I don't have a clue. Because in those days we didn't record everything as we do now. We didn't play it again an hour later as we do now. I got no idea. Nobody said anything. I assume it worked. But there are hundreds of stories like that. I mean, inevitably. Great fun, actually. Great fun. Because it can get a bit, especially if you're in a studio all day long, it can get a bit repetitive. So when things go wrong or you have to think on your feet and react quickly, that's actually the fun part. But it can be a bit challenging at the time.
I'm sure. I mean, you're a professional, consummate
Well,
professional.
they pay me for it. That's what I mean.
But I think there's a message there for many of us that it's in the genre of fake it till you make it.
Well, you do the best you can under those circumstances. I mean, it's no good me saying, well, I can't hear London. I mean, you, the viewer, you're not interested in that. You sing a reporter in Rome, what's going on? That's what you want. They don't care about my personal problems.
No, and I don't know. I mean, it's not quite the same thing, but the first time I ever sang in public, I'm a musician for those who don't know, sing in bands, and my first ever time I was singing a song I'd learned backwards. It was Road to Hell by Chris Rea. Shows you the time.
Well, I like it.
Yeah, and I'm there and I have to be on crutches. It's my first time going to the crowd, and I get through the first verse and it's always good, and there's an instrumental, and I cannot for the life of me remember the next line. And I gesticulate to the band, keep on going, and I lean forward to somebody I know, kind of in the front row, and go, what's the next line? And I'm dying on my feet thinking, oh, everyone's going to hate me, this is awful. I get the next line, I finish the song, and I'm coming off thinking, well, that's me, never going to be allowed to sing again. And people came up and said, hey, I really like that version of what you did. That was great.
Well,
I didn't know. There's no idea.
We can all prepare things to deliver to a presentation or a communication or whatever it happens to be. But the audience who are hearing it for the first time, they don't know what we've prepared.
Yes.
So when we think, oh no, I've left a huge chunk out, they don't know that.
Yeah.
So the key is just to carry on and, as you say, fake it to make it. Just cover those gaps by carrying on and linking the best you can as you go on. That was a key thing I learned very early on, that people don't know what you were hoping to say next. They don't know.
No,
so don't worry about it. But easier said than done.
I'm sure. So what about interviewing people or sort of those moments that stick in your mind of either greatness or ooch or cringeworthy? I mean, is there anything that leaps to mind of your interviewing experience?
Yeah, I mean, the really difficult ones I remember, people who said yes they would be interviewed but then refused to say anything more than one word, which is a real challenge. And then those that you're talking to and they don't realise they're being recorded and they get into a panic. But one of my personal disappointments was on 2 occasions I was lucky enough to interview Muhammad Ali.
Okay.
Arguably the greatest sportsman, certainly the greatest boxer of all time. And I wanted to get him talking about his career and sting like a butterfly and float like a bee, is that right? Whatever.
Probably float like a butterfly and sting like a bee.
Sounds better.
Yes.
And I wanted him to talk about that, but unfortunately, from my perspective, all he wanted to do was talk about his passion and love for his religion.
Okay.
Fair enough. That's up to him. I can't insist on what we talk about. I can only ask questions. Well, when he didn't do it the first time, I went back to the newsroom and a bit disappointed. But about 3 or 4 years later, when I had the second opportunity, I thought, this time. And of course, he didn't want to know. I mean, the interviewee in that kind of circumstance is always in charge.
Yes,
You can only ask questions and hope you get the sort of answer. And there are ways and means of trying to get it out. But when you have somebody like Muhammad Ali, who's done probably more interviews than you and I have together, he is in charge and he's in control.
I guess so. I mean, you know, I use him in my talks and examples quite a lot. He coined a phrase called future history, and I think it's hugely inspirational. But I guess if you're in the context of sports reporter in a sports interview environment, you'd kind of hope someone's going to talk about sports.
You really want a bit of that, don't you? But he started off by saying, "I am the greatest." I mean, what more motivation to make than that?
Yes,
and he was.
It's a great line, isn't it?
And he was, and he proved it. I mean, that was the fascination. Oh yeah, we've heard that before. I'm the greatest, but here was the man who had the talent. He walked the walk and talked the talk, and you know, he's been sadly no longer with us for many years now. But we all remember him. We remember what he did.
Absolutely.
Remember the character he was, and everything else about him. Fantastic.
But he was one of life's great characters. The reason I use him as an example is he coined this phrase called future history. And what he used to do was visualize his fight, almost sort of run it through his mind before he went out there. He'd get all of his aides and his manager and everyone out of the room just before the fight. And he would describe how he'd picture the end of everyone chanting Ali, 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 and the cameras are flashing.
How it would feel.
Yeah, that was it. And the smell and the sweat. And he'd even imagine his favourite commentator, I think it was Aaron Carpenter frequently in the UK, and others coming towards him going, Ali, you've done it again, you are the greatest. And he'd sort of create this future history before he went out there.
Well, future history in sport is vital. I mean, I've been privileged to cover many Olympic Games, and I've done the skiing, downhill skiing. And if you go, they rarely show it on television, but if you have the opportunity, I recommend it. You go to the top of the mountain where they're starting their races, and you see 20 or 30 athletes, and they've got their eyes closed, and they're doing this. You think, what the hell's going on? They are going down that track.
Yes.
They are going down that track, and they're going around all the hurdles and what have you, and they're visualizing it in their mind because they've done it so many times, and that's how they do it. And I interviewed the chap who designed most of the Olympic circuits, most of the downhill circuits over the years. And I was interviewing him, and I was asking him about the most difficult one he's done, the most challenging one. And he said, I can't remember which country it was now. I said, well, how many hurdles, not hurdles, you know what I mean,
the slalom. Gates.
Gates, that's the word, yes. Gates. I said, well, how many gates did you put into that one? He said, hang on a minute. And he closed his eyes and he skied. He skied down in his mind 32.
There you go.
And he did it.
Fantastic.
Extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, I've never come across that before, but that's how they do it. That's how obviously they have to be physically fit and they've practiced and all the rest of it, but it's all up here, and they actually, mentally they go down that track so many times. Extraordinary.
Well, that brings us neatly on to, you worked with the Olympics a lot, haven't you?
Well, I have, yeah. Been very lucky.
And tell us a bit about that.
Well, one of the things I learned very early on, being lucky enough to go to major sporting events around the world and getting paid for it, I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah, bonus.
Big opportunity. The athletes, the footballers, the tennis players, cricketers, whatever it happens to be, whatever sport you're watching, they're all roughly at that level, the same talent, because you have to be to reach that pinnacle of your sport. The difference is up here.
Is it mindset?
It's mindset. It's mindset. And even though they're the best at what they do, they all have coaches. Surprise. They all have coaches. And before the big events, they're talking to their coaches and they're going through various routines and they're rehearsing in their mind what they're going to do. They're replaying in their mind what they've done over the last 4 years to get to this stage. And when the gun goes off to start the race, or the first ball is bowled in cricket, whatever it happens to be, they're off. Because they're ready. They've mentally prepared themselves for this event. And that's the difference for them between winning and losing. The one who's actually got it right at the time in their mind. Because there's very little difference in terms of their actual sporting skills. Yeah. It's all done up here. And sometimes you can outbrain your competitor. Yeah. Simply by your body language, the way you're responding, the way you are at the top of the hill if you're skiing or whatever, or the way you're about to start your run-up in bowling. You can scare the wits out of your opponent simply by the way you're approaching your sport. Yeah, it's a mind game.
Well, it is. I mean, I read The Inner Game many years ago. Excuse me. And almost every biographer I read, or every interview I've seen of anybody who's achieved, primarily in sports, but also in the acting profession or successful entrepreneurs, it's this overall mindset of thinking about it, visualizing it, then taking all the actions. But I think the extra bit is that visualization. And I'm interested in what you say about the body language. It's often how they walk into the room or how they arrive at the starting blocks or what have you. But look at Usain Bolt. I mean, he's one of the most incredible talents in the world today. I mean, I know he's sort of retired, but you just look at the way he just ambles up, as if he's already won the race before he turns up.
And he has.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of it from his point of view, because the others know he's fastest. And they're going to be very lucky to get him on an off day or a slightly off day. He knows he's quicker than all of them, so mentally he's ahead of them anyway. And he's so relaxed, which puts them off again.
Yeah.
So he's got all these tricks, whether it's deliberate or whether it's subliminal, or whether he does it by, that's the way he is a human being. But it works, it's powerful, it knocks the other guys off. And he's another Muhammad Ali in that sense, because nobody has been as quick as him. He's completely wrong in terms of his approach. He's too big for a sprinter. Everything's wrong, but he knows he's the best, he's the quickest, and off he went.
Yes, and I love his kidology. I mean, the way he talks about, I just eat chicken nuggets. Complete nonsense.
Of course,
I mean,
nonsense.
He has incredible talent.
He works extremely hard, and trains extremely hard. And that's part of his persona. I'm going to tell the others I don't do anything.
Yeah.
They don't believe it, but again, subconsciously, perhaps they do.
Yeah.
So he's got that advantage.
Well, that's it. A lot of what I study is it innate talent within people? Are people born with these talents, or is it learned? And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it. In fact, I'll start with your thoughts in your experience.
Well, I think it's both. But particularly in terms of sport, you have to be born with this tremendous skill. And any professional athlete I've ever interviewed, if he's a cricketer, he's good at football. If he's a table tennis player, he's good at swimming. They just have this ability, which is quite extraordinary. I have to be ready here, because I'm in that position again now, Marcus. I've forgotten what.
In terms of talent, born with it, or it's the balance between those who have this innate talent when they start off, or is it the hard work and the repetition to actually learn the skill?
Yeah. It is both of those, because I did some work with Chris Boardman, who was the cyclist.
Okay.
And he, at the time, he'd just become the world record holder for the number of laps in an hour, and it's just non-stop, quite boring. It's going round, and inside an arena. But he was telling me that if I had his heart rhythm, or you had his heart rhythm, we'd probably keel over and die.
Right.
So he was born with that advantage, which meant he could go on much longer than you or I, because of a freak of nature. That's just how he was born physically. But having got that advantage, he was then had to work really, really hard as a cyclist to add the skill and to add the everything else he's learned over the years to his natural advantage to become the world champion that he was. So you have to have both. But there are so many instances of sportsmen and women who are born with this talent, who think, well, I haven't got to practice very hard because I'm better than them. And they are. But because they don't practice, because they don't work at their game, they soon disappear.
Yes.
The winners, the champions, realise that they're lucky in the first place to have this advantage, but they have to work at it, and they have to practice, and they have to get their skills up. So it's a combination of both. And those who are brightest enough to realise that are the winners.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I recently read Mindset by Carol Dweck, and it explores this difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And essentially, one is about a fixed mindset is I've got what I've got, and there's no changing me, and I can't grow or do anything else. A growth mindset is if someone doesn't quite get it right, or is given constructive criticism, they go, wow, that's great, how can I learn, how can I improve, and I'm good at this, but actually I've got to work hard. So it's a talent-based, an effort-based reward system, and time again it shows that for the 2 or 3% who are naturally gifted, the ones of those who absolutely fly are the ones who really work at it, and everyone else has to work at it from the start. And we often say you can invest in attitude first and foremost, and train just about anything else. But it's that desire, that passion, that I'm going to have the right mindset to do this, which carries people over the line.
Absolutely. I mean, it's important in so many areas of life. I mean, communication, as you know, is my thing.
Yes.
We all need to communicate better. We all need to present better, because that's how we talk to people. That's how people hear us and so on. But people say, well, I can't do that. I haven't got the gift of the gab. You know, like Mary's got it or John's got it. I don't have the gift of the gab. It's not a gift. It's a skill.
Yes.
And like any other skill, public speaking, public talking, communicating, it's a skill. The more you practice, the better you become.
Yeah.
It's not a gift.
Absolutely.
It's not a gift.
So it's great to hear you say that, because I remember I'm a member of a thing called Toastmasters. So if anyone, for all of those who are terrified of public speaking, it's a great place to go learn and be nurtured and help you with public speaking. And having done it for a little while now, sometimes people will come up to me and say very kindly, oh, why are you here? You're such a natural, you don't need to be here. And part of me would love the compliment, and that's great. But part of me would go, oh, you've no idea. I work so hard. I used to be terrified.
Well, what they say about
petrified.
in showbiz, they're sort of, it takes them 30 years to become an overnight success.
Yes,
Because they've been learning the ropes.
Absolutely.
Have you ever done Saturday afternoon at the Edinburgh Empire or whatever? You know, if you can do that, you can do anything. But it takes time and practice, and they make mistakes.
Yeah.
And they make sure that the next time they perform, they don't make those mistakes. It's all about practice, until you get better and better and better. And you're never right. You're never completely there. There's always room for improvement, and that's the drive. That's the challenge that we all have to keep going to improve.
Yes. I remember being involved in having to direct someone, because the director didn't turn up for a video, who was very famous on the TV, a name we'd all know. And my gosh, the guy just he couldn't learn lines. And he had to have 20 or 30 goes at each line.
Yeah.
But when he delivered it, when he got it right, boy, he just delivered it.
Yeah.
And so the edit showed him as a great professional. And again, he was working at it to just find a way of getting that one line.
That's right. We do a lot of media training with a whole variety of people, a lot of whom are well-known names in a whole variety of areas, sport, business, what have you. And the reason they're good, the reason they come across so well, is because they practice. They have media trainers in to work at it. It's the same thing as the athletes. Working at it all the time. They're getting better all the time. They're learning all the time. And it's not rocket science. I know it's a terrible cliche, but it's not.
But it's true. What's that quote? I think Peter Allis is one of the first golfers to have coined the phrase, and many others. The more I practice, the luckier I get.
Exactly so.
So how could we share with people listening to this, if we're talking about business or general everyday life, when we hit the challenges? It's all great if you're a top sportsman or a top presenter or what have you, but are there any tips and tricks from a mindset perspective that you could say, you hit a business challenge or a personal challenge, what's the process? What can people do?
Well, we're all human beings, aren't we? I think we forget that. I mean, we've got the cricketers, we assume they're just going to be in top form every day and go out there and score 100. Footballers can play 2 games in 2 days. For goodness sake, they're earning £200,000 a week. We forget we're talking about human beings. So we all have good days and we all have bad days. And when we're having a bad day, and we all know what that means, things just don't go right from the moment you open your eyes in the morning. For whatever reason, it's not going right. You get really frustrated. It's at that moment, and it's so easy when things are going well to just fly through, but it's at that moment when things aren't going so well that you have to remind yourself of your achievements, remind yourself of your good days, remind yourself of how you feel when things were going well and you're having a good day, and try very, very hard and put yourself into that position once again. It's almost like you're standing in a balloon or a bubble, and for whatever reason you're out of that bubble, you're having a bad day, and you've got to somehow work yourself back into that bubble where you're having a good day. And you can do that by rehearsal and remembering and reminding yourself that actually you're not bad at what you're doing.
Yeah.
All right, things aren't going well today, but that's not because I'm a terrible operator or a terrible athlete today. I'm exactly the same person as I was yesterday, but things aren't going right. However, if I remind myself about the good bits, there's every chance I can get back to how I was. It's like rebooting a computer, isn't it?
Absolutely,
it's the same type of thing. So it's a hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I can't sit here and say I do it every time. I can't. I wish I could, but I work at trying to do that. I work at trying to get myself in the best place every time, because that benefits me, clearly, and hopefully it benefits the other people I'm working with.
It's bang on. It's one of the things that I learned when I first got into coaching. It's one of the reasons I do what I do now. And it's that repetition that a lot of people don't realise, that the mind benefits from the same repetition that a golf swing or a skier or anybody learning any skill. This wonderful thing we have in our heads, our mind, benefits from those same repetitions. And it can accidentally take you off track if you start thinking a lot about being off track, or the things that don't work, or the things you can't do. The brain, I've discovered, then starts to focus on those, and that's when we have to do that thing. Oh, well, hang on a minute, why are you taking me over there? And there's lots of good reasons it might, but if we think about, as you say, the good times, the skills I've got, actually, I've got this completely. Get me back into, I like your bubble analogy. Then yeah, absolutely.
And they say, I mean, lots of books and papers have been written, but they say that if you do, certainly in sport, if you do table tennis or football or cricket for 10,000 hours, which is a lot of hours,
Yes.
if you're able to practice for 10,000 hours, you will be as good as a professional.
Yes.
Now, we don't all have 10,000 hours to play table tennis, but if you talk to a professional table tennis player or a professional cricketer or a professional sportsman or whatever, they will look back and think, well, actually, yeah, I've probably done more than 10,000 hours over the years to get to where I am now. So that's the secret, if there is a secret, put the time in.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Do we have the time? Do we have the wherewithal? Do we have the inclination? Do we have the desire to spend 10,000 hours on it?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's how much do we want that thing? How much do we want that change? How much do we want to get rid of an old habit? And whilst it might not always take the whole 10,000 hours, it takes many hours. And I think this is where I certainly was guilty of this in the early days, where I'd want to do something differently or be different, and I'd do it a dozen, half dozen times and then drift off. And now I know, no, it's part of my everyday routine. It has to become something that you do every day. I remember listening to Zig Ziglar years ago, and he has the great analogy about showering. And he says that, if you didn't shower a day, after every day, you'd start whiffing and smell a little bit after a few days. Well, it's the same with your motivation and your mindset. If you don't do it every day, you develop stinking thinking, as the phrase is.
Exactly.
And as corny a phrase as that is, it's the same.
It's true. I mean, the brain, it isn't anatomically a muscle, but think of the brain as a muscle.
Yeah.
And if you don't keep using these muscles, they wither and they die. It's the same upstairs, isn't it? If you stop using these abilities that we have, it will stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Surprise.
Use it or lose it, as the phrase goes.
Yeah.
Well, just on a few other topics, I like to talk about, find out about you and other interesting aspects of your life. So music is one of my passions. How about for you? Interest in music, first single, genres? Tell me more.
I do like music, and the older I've got, and this sounds terribly corny, but I've now listened mainly to classical music. I know it sounds terrible, but I find it very soothing, very relaxing. I think a big favourite of mine is Mozart. But they say, don't they, that if you're doing your exams or what have you, and you're doing your homework or revising, and you've got Mozart playing, it actually helps you remember, it helps you learn. There's always something in the music, or the rhythm of the music, perhaps nobody's quite sure, that actually makes you learn better. But I do like a whole range of music. I do like a bit of heavy metal, and in fact I got my second son, really interested in heavy metal simply by playing him Hotel California, which is not quite heavy metal.
I was going to say, I wouldn't quite put that for me in the heavy metal genre.
He developed that into heavy metal, and he now writes his own heavy metal music. It's quite interesting. But so I can go from listening to the Beatles in the 1960s to Hotel California to Beethoven's Sixth Symphony, and I'm quite happy doing that in the car. I don't have to have one genre. I can listen to them all, and there are certain pieces of classical music that bring me to tears every time. Wow. And I think, why? Why does this happen?
It's the vibration, isn't it? It's the emotion. It's the soundtrack of a film. It can bring us to tears. It can take us through a moment in time.
I don't know. I mean, Beethoven's Sixth, the Pathetic, it's called, right at the very end. Every time I hear that, I got that feeling, and I love it.
Yeah, emotion is great. So, everyone can have a listen to Beethoven's Sixth.
Wow.
But it's funny you mentioned concentration. Spotify have these moods lists and playlists, and there's for study, there's for concentration, and for deep concentration. And interestingly, the more sort of heavy the concentration is, the more classical music that's in there.
Okay.
And so when I'm writing a book at the moment, and always updating my courses. But I've really got to think. I've started listening to classical music. It's not something I've done for ages, but it does help you concentrate.
Once I was in France, again, it was during a football tournament, and I was in a taxi with my crew, and the taxi driver, Frenchman, obviously, and we were stuck in awful traffic. It was dreadful outside Paris. It was horrible. We were sitting there, and he put on the radio, and my French isn't. I've got O-level French, and he don't think he had O-level English, but we managed to communicate in a way. What he said to me was, when he turned on the classical music, he said, "That's my medicine as a taxi driver.
Nice.
That's my medicine. That's what gets me through this traffic jam every day." I thought, interesting.
Fantastic. Okay, well, before we wrap it up, is there anything else you would like to share with our viewers, our listeners, in terms of how they can keep their mindset in tip-top condition, how they can, when they hit any challenges, what they do?
Well, I think it's really keeping focused on what you want to achieve and never giving up on that. I mean, because of the career I've had, I've been very, very lucky. I get a lot of students and others saying, "Well, how do you get into it?" It's always been a very popular profession to be a journalist. How do I do it? Because all I get is rejections. And I have dozens of rejections. You've got to develop a thick skin. But what's more important, you've got to have that desire not to be put off by rejection or put off by the word no. You've got to keep going and finding other ways of getting in. I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I mean, there's nothing special about me at all. I went to a state school and this, that, and the other, and I was very lucky in the sense that I knew from a very early age I wanted to be a journalist, which helps.
Yeah.
Which helps a great deal. I know from my own kids, it helps a great deal to know that, and I can't tell you why, but I don't know. But that's what I wanted to do. So I had this sort of map in my head, and I just made sure that I got to where I wanted to go. And when I was doing News at 10, other programs, when you had an audience of 10 million viewers,
wow,
because of the difference in television then from now, I'm talking 15, 20 years ago. If somebody from my background can be front of camera in front of 10 million viewers by sheer determination, will, desire, and hard work, putting in those hours, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, working through till 11 o'clock at night, all the rest of it. But because I was driven, I wanted to do it. If I can do it, you can do it. But you've got to have that resolve, you've got to have that drive, you've got to have that determination, and you've got to think, I can do this.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much. Wise words indeed. And I hope the viewers and listeners have taken a lot of positive from that. So yeah, determination, hard work, having a roadmap, all of those great things.
And luck.
Yeah, look, well...
You've got to make your own luck when the opportunities arise.
I think, luck is that thing that happens when you've had a lot of hard work, determination, effort, and a great plan that comes into play. That's my personal view. And if you weren't there in the first place...
And it's knowing these are opportunities.
Yes.
We all have things in our life we look back and, why didn't I do that then, knowing what I know now? But it's being aware at that time that there's an opportunity.
Yes.
That's in light bulb moments. I've come across a few of those.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Thank you for my coffee.
You're welcome.
This is Graham's office. It's not just me sitting having a coffee here. He chose not to have one, but it's been fabulous to spend a bit of time with you. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more of you again in the near future.
My pleasure, Marcus. Always a pleasure talking.
Wishing everyone a fabulous mindset. Have a great day.